I'm going to go ahead and get started, and then this will just be in my feed so people can watch at a different time. All right, so I'm just going to jump right in. So most of you guys chose to learn about increasing your metabolism. Great topic. That's like what I nerd out on all the time. So I'm going to try to give like a very practical, very like low level, just kind of lesson on metabolism and then how to increase it. Because I think we're, like hearing more and more about like metabolism. That's becoming a more popular topic, which I think is great that people are kind of diving a little deeper into like the science of that and not just like randomly doing programs. Like understanding how the body actually works is helpful. Especially when we're trying to like create results for like a variety of people, right? So okay, so here's what I got. We're going to talk a little bit about like what metabolism is, like at a really basic level, just to kind of get an understanding of like what it does and how it functions. That'll help us then like move into different components of your metabolism and then ultimately like how to actually increase it. So yes, this will be a little bit of a lesson. We'll see who sticks with me, who's nerdy enough. Obviously, I love this stuff, but I also feel like understanding kind of the mechanics, not like super deep, is really helpful so that you can make better like decisions, then understand like why you do what you do or why, let's say, your coach has you do whatever they have you doing. So, all right, let's start with like, again, low level, like what is metabolism? So if I'm going to put that in like one sentence, that's really all the processes, which processes, there's many of them, that basically is converting, like food into energy. Okay, so there's way more to it, but if we're going to look at it from a very like basic level, that's really what's happening. So how it does that though is going to then impact like weight loss, weight gain, and then just like long-term health, obviously, right? And so if you really want to think about it, your metabolism's main job is really just to keep you alive. And so obviously it's going to take in, whatever food that you're providing, and then it's going to use that and then determine then how your body functions. So obviously really important. So unfortunately, like people have kind of deduced or reduced metabolism down to like calories in, calories out. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just a really small part of the whole like story. Yes, calories matter. Yes, energy output matters, but there's so much more kind of going on. So it's not really like a calculator, like, okay, well, this person has had 1800 calories. That's 200 over their, maintenance. And so therefore we're in, a surplus. Not really. Instead, and if you followed me for any amount of time, you'll recognize this. It's really more like a thermostat. So rather than it like just making these like really black and white calculations of like, oh, we're over energy or we're under, you got to think of it more like a thermostat. And so instead, it's really adjusting to you. So your behavior, your decisions, your lifestyle, it's really kind of taking in all that information and then adjusting in order to basically keep you alive. So let me talk just quickly in terms of like calorie restriction, because most people who are looking to increase their metabolism are probably also dieting or looking at body composition changes, right? And so let's look in terms of like restriction. So under eating, which I'm going to say 9 out of 10 of the clients that I work with come to me under eating because they're dieting, right? And the mentality is, well, I got to eat less in order to weigh less. So here's what happens though, when that is prolonged, and we are, getting less and less food coming in, at some point you will plateau. That's normal. That's healthy. That's what should happen. So remember, like your metabolism is taking in all of this input. If not enough energy is coming in, at some point, it's going to kind of extrapolate like, okay, whoa, like if this keeps happening, survival is, chance of survival is going to get less and less. And so your metabolism is then going to start adapting to that and making some adjustments we don't like via a plateau. And it really just kind of goes into conservation mode, and it's going to conserve energy. Again, it doesn't understand, like, number one, it doesn't understand you're willingly doing this, that you're participating in a deficit of your own will. It has no idea how long it's going to go on. At some point, like it's not going to happen immediately, but certainly um, over like several weeks, the body's going to like start to understand like, okay, yeah, we're definitely like not taking in enough food. It's time to start, changing up some things in order for survival to go ahead and continue to happen. So this is going to look like very subtle things. So it could be like little like hair loss or hair thinning, brittle nails, really dry skin, maybe being a little more cold all the time, a lot less like desire to move. So like when you start feeling like, I just don't want to work out, I don't want to like stand up, I don't want to like move, basically that's your metabolism doing that on purpose. Then we start kind of getting into more serious issues. Like for ladies, you might start seeing your cycle get a little irregular, or you might start just like missing periods. The thyroid starts to get kind of haywire. Infertility starts to happen, right? And like just extrapolate, like your body's really smart, and so in terms of like, let's say infertility, your body is going to be at a point like, okay, well, this person can't even like take in enough energy for themselves. They really shouldn't be procreating at this moment. They don't even have enough energy for themselves. How are they going to grow a baby for 9 months? And then even afterwards, I think our human physiology understands like energy is needed, let's say for breastfeeding and just like keeping a child alive. Hi to all my parents of toddlers, like you totally understand how much energy is being expended just keeping those little people alive. Right. And so this is a way your body adjusts for those things. It totally gets that, like, yeah, this is not a good time. And so all this like down regulation happens, right? It's like your body's like, it's not really that important. I think I need my person alive more so than I need them procreating at this moment. Or like, it's not really important that this person has like thick, lustrous hair right now. So we can kind of down regulate that. So, it's very like frugal during those times on purpose. So like a lot of times we feel like, why is my body like working against me? Why do I feel like, nothing works? Well, it's working. It's just not working in your favor anymore. And it has to do those things in order for you to stay alive. That's really all that it wants. So, okay. So that's just at a basic level, understanding your metabolism is really just supporting your survival. That's really what it wants. And so it's going to just adapt to whatever you're doing. Think like a thermostat. It's always sending out signals. What's the status? Are we good? Can we upregulate? Do we need to downregulate? Are we good? Can we maintain? And then it makes decisions based on that feedback. Okay, let's talk quickly then. Like there are different components then to our metabolism. And I'm going to kind of go in order of like what has the biggest impact to the smallest. And you'll probably then see the answer to how do you increase your metabolism based on these things. Okay. So some of these words you may or may not know. I will try to like just give you a very like easy definition of them. But it's not important that we understand like the terminology so much as just like the functionality that's happening there. So, okay. BMR. So you may have heard of that. Doesn't matter. Like that term exactly, like basal metabolic rate, that accounts for 70% of your metabolism. Okay, so what is BMR? Really, this is like the minimum energy needed to just keep the lights on. So I always tell like my clients when we start working together, okay, your BMR is like, let's just pretend you're in a coma. This is how much energy you still need coming in to keep you alive. So like you still have to breathe, your heart still needs to beat. You're still digesting food, even though you're not moving, like you still need energy coming in. So this is like bare minimum amount of energy coming in. That is accounting for 70% of your metabolism. So this is influenced by a lot of things. And most of this is kind of out of your control. Few of them are in your control. So we want to pay attention to those pieces. So your age definitely is going to have an impact on your BMR. Body composition, that you have control over, right? So in terms of like how much fat versus how much muscle you have on your body size. So just think like a bigger body requires more energy. That makes sense. Smaller body does not. Climate. So this is where like this whole like cold therapy is becoming very popular. Like going and freezing, like going and dunking in really cold water, because what ends up happening is you're lowering like core temperature, which then creates this demand for your body to create heat. So in a sense, you have some control over that in terms of like, you can put yourself in those situations. I've tried it. It's very, very miserable. It's just really tough. So that's kind of that piece. And I think why like it's becoming more and more popular, because you could put yourself in a situation where you're like creating this need for your body to expend more energy. I just think it's really not fun. I think there's other ways that I'd rather try to increase my metabolism. But certainly it is a mental a little mental toughness activity as well. Your gender also has a lot to do with that. I think it's just kind of common knowledge, like men do burn more calories than women. That also has to do with like body composition generally is more favorable for men. Excuse me, men tend to have more muscle than women tend. It's not always the case, right? And then also related is just hormonal status. Your hormonal status will also like impact your metabolism. So that's just your BMR. That's 70% of your metabolism right there. What you have control over mainly is your body composition. So we'll talk about, what we need to do in terms of like body composition in order to like make this work for ourselves. You could certainly work on the climate thing. You could even just like, if you work in a cold environment, that can work to your advantage too. I just don't think like the return on investment there is high enough to really go to those extremes. In fact, like actually, if you guys remember like Michael Phelps, he had a really high, like, I mean, that guy was like taking in like 10,000 calories. And part of it was like, obviously he was super active, like swimming and, producing a lot of activity there, but he was also in a cold pool. So his body was constantly having to like create and generate heat. And so that just like added to his metabolism and that. Okay. So BMR, 70%. The next one only accounts for 15%, but like there's 4 components, by the way. 15% is like the biggest piece. Like the next one is 10%. The last one is 5%. So like 15% might not seem like a lot, but it is in terms of like, we have a lot of control over this next piece, and that's NEAT. So most people have started to hear like NEAT. It's really just your activity that's not intentionally exercise. So it's non-exercise activity. So this is basically everything outside of like eating, breathing, sleeping, like that stuff is part of your BMR, keeping you alive. This is like all the movement now that you're doing outside of that, but not intentional exercise. So there's a big debate on whether like walking is part of NEAT. I count it as NEAT just because like we have to walk. I mean, hopefully you are getting up and moving, throughout your day. And so for most people, it's not a hardship unless it's a time thing. That's, a different issue, but I count it as part of your non-exercise activity, even though like I can intentionally go for walks. I can also intentionally just make sure I'm moving more. So really this is like walking, doing yard work, standing, fidgeting, taking the stairs, doing housework, running after your toddler. All those are non-exercise activities. So I want to point out that those people that you always feel like, God, they must have just like a really fast metabolism. Like they eat whatever they want and they never gain weight. I almost guarantee, it's not true for everybody, but I almost guarantee those people are just very active in terms of like, they're always moving. Like these are hyper kind of people who are like fidgeting. They're the ones that are like always like moving in their seat. They've got to get up. They're like tapping their foot, literally fidgeting. They've done studies. They like blink more. Like these people are just putting out a lot more energy. So it's really not that they just have a faster metabolism. It's just like this piece of their metabolism is optimized, I guess we could say. They're just really moving a lot. It's funny because like the other day I had been doing a lot of work at the computer. And then I was like, I told a friend, I was like, I'm going to go for a walk because I just feel like I need to get my wiggles out. And it's like part of that, right? Like there's just this like desire to move. And so that falls underneath. That's 15%, of your metabolism. You have full control over how active you are in terms of just your movement, right? So this is where you could actually burn a lot of calories. I mean, I've seen studies where very like active individuals, not exercise per se, just active individuals are burning like 3, 5, 700 extra calories just because they are just so active in terms of like moving all the time. Right. And so you have a lot of control over this piece right there. So you don't really have to be a gym rat. You just need to stand, you need to move, you need to park farther. You need to like just do the little things that keep you off the couch and off the chair for a majority of the time. Okay. So that's the second piece, neat 15%. So we're looking at 85% of your metabolism is right there. Just, your BMR, and then all this other activity that you may do outside of activity. Oh, sorry, exercise. Okay. Next one. I love this next one. So the thermic effect of food. So this accounts for 10% of your metabolism. So when you eat, like your body has to metabolize that food, right? In fact, that's what your metabolism is doing, right? So it has to break it down. It has to digest the food, and then it has to absorb that food. That takes energy. Now that's 10%. It's not huge, obviously, but that's significant, right? And here's the thing. Some foods use up more energy than others. So here's where we can get really, really strategic. So most people have heard of macros. So very quickly, like macros are just what all food is made up of: fat, carbs, protein. So most of us have heard of those three things. Most of your food is a combination. Very likely it's predominantly one of those things, but most likely it's a combo. Okay, so let's get into it. If you were to eat, let's say just something that was predominantly fat, less than 3% of those calories will be burned for energy. It's pretty low. So think, I don't know, butter, right? That's all fat. 3% of those calories will get burned in just the breaking down and absorbing of that food itself, right? And so not a whole lot of like ROI in terms of that. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have it. Absolutely, we should. We need healthy fats coming in. It's just we're not getting a whole lot of bang for our buck in terms of fat. Okay, next, carbs. So carbs are going to be between 5 and 10%. Great. That's almost like double, triple the amount of fat, right? So breaking down carbs is going to give us a little more back in terms of like those calories. And then protein. Okay. So like, if you know me, if you're a client of mine, or even if you just are around me a lot, you know that protein is like my best friend. 20 to 30% of the calories that you're getting out of the protein are going to get used in terms of digestion. Okay. So like, let's say I eat 100 calories of chicken. I'm actually only going to absorb 70 to 80 of those calories. Amazing, right? So this is why you see people like promoting higher protein diets, right? It's just, why not allow yourself to be able to like utilize a little more energy? It keeps you a lot fuller, right? For longer. I don't know. To me, it's like a no-brainer. It's also going to be like super helpful when you are trying to lose weight, because it's going to keep you fuller. You're just going to get a little more like calorie burn out of that, like a lot more, obviously, compared to like carbs and fat, and then preserve lean tissue, which we'll get to in a moment. So eat your protein. It's like, oh my gosh, so I can't say enough good things about that. Okay. Last, I just want to point out that like studies really show like there's really no like big difference between like eating like smaller, more frequent meals versus like larger, more infrequent. Like, I don't know, I think it was back in the 90s, or like you got to eat like 5, 6, 7 times a day. You can do that if it works for you, but you're not really getting like more of a metabolism boost. Just eat, eat the right things. So, okay. So 10% of your metabolism right there in just what you're eating. Amazing. So we've got our BMR, 70%, NEAT, 15%, thermic effective food, 10%, right? We're looking right there now at like 95% of your metabolism is based on those things. What have we not talked about? Like exercise, right? Okay, so that's the last piece, is exercise activity. This is intentional exercise. So those of you, doing CrossFit, doing Orange Theory, F45, yes, that stuff is helpful in terms of like it burns calories, right? It does increase your metabolism, but it only accounts for about 5% of your metabolism. So this is why that's not a huge lever to pull. Do we want to exercise? Of course, there's a million, great benefits to being active, increasing your cardiovascular health. But if you're doing it solely to just burn calories, there's probably better places that you could like put your energy, right? Again, I'm not trying to disparage exercise. Absolutely. Like it needs to happen. I think most of us could benefit from being more active and being intentional about that. It's just, it's not really, the needle mover. I think most people think that it is. So we just got to put it in its rightful place, right? Yes, it's helpful. It's just not doing what I think you think it is, right? And so this is where, like, if you've ever been in a place where you're like, man, I just exercise all the time. Like, I'm so active, like in terms of exercise like that, and you don't see any movement. Well, because you're probably not focusing on the things that you need to be. And like, you're looking at this 5% that probably not doing what you think it is. So okay, so there's your metabolism broken down. You've got your BMR, which is a majority. You don't have a whole lot of like say on that, except for body composition, which we will talk about. You got your thermic effect of food, lean into that protein. You have NEAT, right? Stay active, stay on your feet, walk, do those little things. Just stop yourself from being sedentary. And then, of course, we want exercise. So how do we increase our metabolism? We go ahead and we make sure that we're, utilizing those 4 components to our advantage, right? So here's what I would suggest. Number 1 is start with increasing your NEAT. Get off the couch, get off like your seat as I sit right now. Although I teach all day on my feet, so I feel like I can sit right now. But do whatever you can to just create a more like active lifestyle, get a standing desk, make walking, regular part of your routine. Park farther, right? That's a really easy one that you could do, whenever you go somewhere. Just give yourself, a few hundred extra steps just with that. Play with your kids, your grandkids, your niece and nephew. I know I go see my niece and nephew and I almost always will just like blow my steps out of the water, just hanging out with them, right? Just have like the mentality of like, the more active I am, the better it is for my metabolism, but it doesn't have to be like backbreaking, laying like in a pool of sweat every day in order to like increase that. So do what you can to just get moving. Second thing I would focus on is eating enough protein. Remember, protein, you're like utilizing 20 up to 30% of those calories just in the digesting, which means you can eat more. And you're actually not absorbing all of those calories. I like to start people with just have protein at every meal. Let's start there. Is protein present? And, a good percentage of your meal. From there, maybe I'd start saying like, hey, put a number on that, maybe 20 to 30 grams per meal. That's right there going to get you above like the average American who's like bringing in a pretty dismal amount of protein on a daily basis. Have a protein shake every day, like easy. You get 25 grams of protein in like 8 ounces, of water, easy. And it's not even going to like fill you up tremendously just because, it's a liquid there, but you can get in protein that way. So you can get obviously much more detailed with that. It's hard to tell you exactly how much protein, but if we're going to be general, I would say you want to work your way up. Please do not just like immediately try to like down 150 grams of protein, but I'd say for the average person, 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight is a pretty darn good estimation, somewhere in that ballpark. So eat your protein. All right, next, strength train, right? So here's the thing. Remember the body composition part, the more muscle you have and less fat is more favorable for your metabolism. And so if we can actually focus a lot of our workout, our exercise to be strength training, amazing, right? Increasing your muscle is going to increase your BMR. This is going to actually allow you to expend more energy at rest, which is great. You don't even have to work harder for it. Muscle also is like a glucose sink. So meaning the more muscle you have, the more carbohydrates you can eat, right? Carbs actually turn into glucose and then can get stored in your muscle, more carbs. Yay. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be like, I hate carbs. I don't want more of them in my life. We all want more. Right. And so I would much rather sink them into my muscles than they be stored as fat. Amazing. So lean on strength training in order to like change that body composition. Again, remember that's part of your BMR, which is 70% of your metabolism is resting in your BMR. I would still actually, so the fourth thing is include high intensity. I would just be really intentional and careful about that. We don't need to overdo the high intense workouts. Believe me, I've been there. And like, it's just a road to like burn out really fast, right? More is not better. I think the general like average person like myself, 1 to 2, high intense workouts a week would be fine. That's enough, right? And then by the way, do some strength training, maybe like 3 times a week. That's already 5 times a week. That's more than probably most people can really commit to on a week to week basis. But I think it has its place. I just think it's really overblown in terms of like, you do not need to be doing like 2 CrossFit workouts a day, 6 times a week. Yeah, that usually doesn't end well for most people. Okay. And the last thing is you need sleep, which seems a little like off topic. Like, where did I get that from? Like, we didn't talk about sleep at all with metabolism, but look, lack of sleep is going to lower your energy. Obviously you didn't recover enough with, lack of sleep. And so you're going to just have a less propensity, obviously, to move. You're not going to want to work out. You're not going to want to push hard. You're not going to want to walk, stand, just be active and on your feet. And then hormones start to kind of get off balance, right? If you remember, part of your BMR is just hormonal balance. And so when we start like throwing those off, you're going to affect your metabolism as well. So get your sleep. You need it. It is, impacting you negatively. I just like, honestly, like that's a hard thing for me. Definitely. It's the one thing I struggle with the most, but gosh, when I get my sleep, I'm like, oh my God, it feels so amazing. I can like take on the day. I want to work out. I want to walk. I want to do all those things. So get your sleep. So, all right. That's what I got for you guys today. I hope what you got out of this is that you have a lot of control over your metabolism. It's not this thing that's like broken. It's not because you're old. It's not your genetics, slightly. You have a lot of control over your metabolism. You just need to focus on the right things. So focus on the things that actually move the needle, be intentional. You don't have to be a gym rat, right? You just need to know, where to put your time and effort. So